Welcome to this episode of the Juggle is Real podcast. Thank you so much for clicking through, for tuning in, and for choosing to spend a little bit of time here with me. I'm so thrilled to share this episode with you because, funny story, I actually heard our guest expert being interviewed on another podcast, and her words resonated so deeply with me that I just had to muster up the courage to reach out and ask if she would share her knowledge and her practice with us here today. Her name is Shonda Moralis, and I am just so appreciative of all of the work she's doing. She truly is on a mission to help ambitious moms like you and I play big without burning out. Shonda has a master's in social work and is a licensed clinical social worker. She is also the author of the award-winning book, Breathe, Mama, Breathe, as well as her latest book, Don't Forget to Breathe, a reminder that we all need. We're going to have to pick up this book. Shonda is a psychotherapist, a life balance coach, therapreneur, and podcast host of Therapeutic Perspective, where mental health professionals can earn continuing education credits for listening. Shonda serves on the board of the Shanti Project, an education nonprofit providing evidence-based mindfulness services to children and adults. She lives in Pennsylvania with her husband and 2 kids, loves to play outside, endeavors to practice what she preaches, and is perennially fascinated by what makes people tick. I'm so grateful for this. I'm so happy to share. Are you ready to learn more about mindfulness, why it is so important, how we can develop practices that are easy and effective and seamlessly integrate in our day-to-day lives? Let's get started. Welcome to the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm your host, Andryanna. A few years ago, burnout nearly cost me that happy, fulfilled life that I'd always dreamed of. Every day left me feeling overwhelmed with stress at work, at home, and just with life in general. I felt like I was constantly running and couldn't catch my breath. So I embarked on a journey of finding better balance, of learning how to prioritize my own needs, of shifting my mindset to live with more ease and balance, of learning how to do more without the pressure of doing it all. And I discovered that letting go of the need for a perfect life opened up opportunities to bring in more joy. So I am sharing my experience and my learnings with you so that you don't have to struggle. I want to show by example how liberating and empowering it can be to silence expectations, to learn how to live through the chaos of work and family with grace, joy, and ease. So what do you think? Are you with me? Let's get started. Before we dive into today's episode, I have great news to share with you. If you've listened to the podcast before, you've likely heard me talk about this one shift that will forever change your life. It will make you a better mom, a better spouse, a better colleague, boss, and teammate. It will improve your health, your happiness, make you more efficient, reduce stress, and overall feel better. This shift, my friend, is putting you first, making yourself your number one priority, above the kids, above work, above the housework, the homework, and the to-do list. And it's easier said than done. But the good news is that I am hosting an intimate but impactful workshop on November 16th called You First, making the shift to better balance. In just 2 short but very important hours, I will help you shift your mindset, lose the guilt, and get rid of judgments. This is a fully immersive live workshop on November 16th. You will leave our virtual space with actionable tools, manageable boundaries, and easy ways to shift your life immediately. Listen, I know you're strapped for time. I know that you are managing a lot, but mostly I know that putting yourself first will make all of it a lot easier and feel so much better. So join me virtually from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday, November 16th for You First, a shift to better balance. There's a link to reserve your spot now in the podcast notes. I can't wait to see you and help you put yourself first. Now let's get to today's episode. Shonda, welcome to the Juggle is Real podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
I'm so happy to be with you, Andryanna.
Okay, so we know a little bit about you already from the introduction. We know your beautiful background and your expertise, but why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself? Like, who is Shonda Moralis? Tell us about you.
Right. So I am mom to two kids. My kids are about to be pretty soon 11 and 21. So this 10-year gap between the two, which is always interesting to talk about. People are curious about that. And I live in Pennsylvania in the US, and I love to play outside. That's part of my bio, but that is what makes me really happy, is getting out into nature. And I always feel like it's a reset for my mood, no matter what's going on. If I just step outside and get a few minutes of fresh air or toss the football with my son or whatever that is, I am just totally, I can just start over. And so I think that is a big piece of who I am.
Nature. Yes. And it's nice that we were chatting a little bit before we started to record this, and you're mentioning that you're sort of in between, sort of in a bit of a rural area. Where I am, I'm in a city, but we are like a stone's throw away from hundreds of lakes. There's lots of trails. And just as I look outside my window, I'm looking to, beautiful fall foliage. And I think that's just so helpful for so many of us to connect to nature.
Oh,
so
yes.
You are a mindfulness expert, so to speak. So let's just start with that. How would you describe mindfulness? Because I think that a lot of these terms, when we're talking about self-care or intentional living, we're starting to hear them a little bit more often. And sometimes we can have preconceived notions of what that means. Self-care is, having that bubble bath or whatever that might be. But, there are so many different ways that we can think of this. So how would you describe what mindfulness is?
Right. Very simply, it's paying attention to what's happening in the moment with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. And that is the part that often is missed, because we tend to know mindfulness is paying attention to the moment that we're in. But it is this, as best we can, being non-judgmental and curious and open and accepting. And so the opposite of mindfulness is running on automatic pilot. So we've all done that, kind of drive somewhere and realize, wow, I wasn't paying attention at all. And I don't remember making a turn or driving this stretch of road, which can be, kind of disconcerting. But our do go into autopilot quite often. So as best we can, we try to come back into the moment so that we have a choice as to where we place our attention, what our priorities are, how we spend our time. We have more choice in how we respond to situations rather than just reacting. And so when we're in autopilot, our minds are either in the future, we're worrying, or what ifing, we're running through our to-do list, or we're in the past, or rehashing a conversation, or thinking of a memory. And so mindfulness is the opposite of autopilot. And so that's what we're trying to do, is pull ourselves out of autopilot on a more regular basis so we can be awake and aware for our lives.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So being able to pull yourself into the present moment, being able to feel and to be able to respond to what's happening, or just to how you're doing at any given moment in time.
Right. Exactly.
I love that. And I think it resonates so deeply with me. And I think for so many, because so much of our days are sort of kind rinse and repeat, especially as children, when we have young children, we're going through the motions because there's so much that has to happen in a day. And, in our careers, whether we're working at home, whether we're out in the office or in a different type of setting, these are the things that are ongoing. So I think that it's so easy, especially as we begin to feel the overwhelm creep in, as there are different stressors that can be affecting us, to just try to push out our feelings, try to push out anything else, because we're on that straight and narrow of, okay, there's so much to do. Let's just power through this.
Right. And so it can be really radical to get ourselves to pause and just stop and take a few breaths. I mean, that sounds so simple. It sounds almost ridiculous that we need to be conscious of that and intentional about it, but we do. And I'm completely, guilty of this as well. I wrote, we tend to write the books we need to read ourselves. And, so I definitely, and a lot of what my second book is about life balance. And so, I tend to overfill my plate, to do too much, to take on too many things. And I can find that I can spin out in my head. And just this morning, I went for a run and I was coming back from my run and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I remember to close the garage door when I left the house today, which, and it was okay. My dog is home and it's, I live again in a rural area, but I came home and my garage door was closed. And I was like, wow, okay, I don't remember closing the garage door this morning. That's just such a simple example of I was in my head. I must have been thinking about what's coming next or whatever else I was doing. And so it can be something as simple as that we miss these things, or we miss the beautiful moments in life too. So the more we're awake and aware and can drop into being more mindful, we tend to notice these more beautiful, pleasant moments that are around us. I talk about the in-between moments, the ordinary moments, whether with our kids or just walking outside and noticing that the birds are chirping and the sun is shining. Or was I in my head and I don't even know? I don't even remember half of my run. Our lives can look two different
For running,
ways.
I wouldn't mind that as much. I'm not much of a runner, but I see where you're going.
Right,
I do love a beautiful walk or hiking. And I think that a lot of us have these moments, and sometimes these moments turn into almost full days and we're hopping into bed and we're like, whew, where did that day go?
That's right.
I mean, I like to practice what I preach just as you, but it's coming from a place where I did experience burnout in 2018. So I've been working on leading what we call more intentional living through like what you're talking about, just in paying attention and looking at what's around me, and through these moments of putting myself first and actually caring for myself. So I love that you are mentioning different ways that you're doing this. And I want to get into that a little bit more as well. Mindfulness is a vital component in your life. You've literally written books on it. And I think that they're so beautiful and so important. So can you maybe share a little bit why mindfulness is so important from all of these aspects, looking to our personal lives, our parenting, professional lives? Tell us a little bit about the benefits associated with living more mindfully.
Sure. Well, let me start by sharing a little bit about my experience and how I got into that, because like I mentioned, my daughter's going to be 21. And when she was about 3, I came across mindfulness as part of reading. As I'm a psychotherapist, I've had a practice for many years now. And I thought, wow, this is really intriguing because I've been practicing yoga and a little bit of meditation, shavasana, corpse pose at the end of yoga that everybody
The
loves.
best part.
That was about it. Yeah, exactly. But I hadn't done any formal meditation. So I enrolled in my local hospital's 8-week class that it's a mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And this is an international program that's been around for about 40 years now. And part of the homework is to meditate for a half an hour every day. And I know everybody's eyes bug out when I say a half an hour every day, especially when people have kids that are like, okay, sure.
Good luck.
However, I had one child who was 3. And I am a recovering perfectionist and a people pleaser. So I did my homework and I started meditating a half an hour every day. And very soon I noticed these benefits because I am also a doer and I like to check things off my list. And I noticed I slowed down just a notch, but I was actually more productive, more efficient. I was just enjoying my life more. And I was more fun and more playful. And I could think on my feet, whether it was at work or with my little one. And so I was hooked right away. And so I continued practicing and teaching and going through teacher training and so forth. And mindfulness also helped me, fast forward to the time when my son was about to be born and my daughter was about to turn 10. And I knew from experience, no way will I be meditating for half an hour with a newborn. And so that is how my first book came about. It's 5-minute mindfulness for busy moms. What I didn't realize, when I was pregnant with my son is that a perfect storm of events happened and I found myself with postpartum depression. And I remember there was a moment in my bed about my son was maybe 2 weeks old and it was about Christmas time. And I was like, I really wish I could just disappear. And I really felt that. And that was scary for me because I'd never come at all close to even that's what we call passive suicidal ideation. It wasn't active. I wasn't going to do anything about it, but I really felt like if I could just disappear for a moment, like I mean, for a moment, I felt like if I could just disappear, I would like that. But then I thought about my daughter and I was like, whoa, I kind of snapped back out of that a little bit, but it wasn't lost on me that as a therapist, I wasn't prepared for this, that I was going to be hit by this. So I used my mindfulness practice to really, as a lifeline, to kind of take it moment by moment, day by day, until I could kind of feel like myself again and get back on track. So it's helped me in so many ways throughout my life, even with my father passing, he was sick with cancer, and kind of sitting by his bedside and being there when he died, I guess sitting with those big emotions. So it can help us in so many ways. So anything from the unpleasant moments of life, from temper tantrums with our kids that are unpleasant, to the big, really, really hard moments of grief. Mindfulness can help us stay present and recognize that we can tolerate a lot of this hard stuff. And it also, there are so many benefits, talking about burnout. My goal with my work is to have women be more proactive people, be more proactive in recognizing when the balance is shifting out of balance. And so that we can course correct and catch it, so we don't have to hit burnout before we go, whoa, what's happened to me. But like I said, with postpartum depression, sometimes, and I don't know your experience, but sometimes we find ourselves there before we even knew what happened. And so it does happen. But as best we can we, like you said, give ourselves permission to take these little shifts of practice of mindfulness throughout our day, so that we can create a little bit more of life balance ongoing.
Exactly. Exactly. And I love that you're mentioning the spectrum, right? Because often, we are caught up in the day-to-day and the little nitty-gritty details. But then these big things can happen. And sometimes they're big things in a good way, a promotion,
yes.
or, just even something as small, like I have 3 boys, and one of them has made a competitive hockey team. So we're so proud of him, so happy for him. And now, instead of being on the ice twice a week, he's on the ice 4 or 5 times a week, right? So these big shifts can happen that we perhaps feel that we're prepared for, or that we want to happen. However, actually, doing the things that we say we're going to do might be a little bit more tricky. And then on the other end of it, these things that are totally unexpected, that we, didn't see coming or never wanted to happen in a million years, they might be occurring, right? And so being able to recognize the good, the bad, but still have the practice of coming to yourself to put yourself first, and to give yourself that time and space to feel the happy, to feel the sad, to feel whatever it is that you need. I think that's just so important, to be able to give yourself that. Definitely. And I would love to hear a little bit more about your approach. But before we talk about sort of this process of being more mindful and how we can actually take action, can you share with us, how does it look like for you? Like, what is mindfulness to you on a daily basis? Both looking, are you thinking of it from the future? Are you planning it out? Or are you just giving yourself those pockets when you feel that you need it? Like inside and out, how do you practice mindfulness individually, personally?
Right. So I'm all about habits, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as part of, my framework of how we establish these habits. But for me, it looks like, after all of these years, I don't tend to meditate for a half an hour every day anymore. It's anywhere between 5 minutes and 20, something like that. And some days I feel like I want a guided meditation. Some days I do it on my own. Some days it looks like, well, first of all, I'll say, when my alarm goes off, I often will snooze it for a few more minutes, because I will totally go back into a deep sleep if I don't set it again. And I just spend a few minutes thinking about what I'm grateful for, which, we all know about gratitude, and it sounds so cliche and everything, but really thinking about what I'm grateful for that day, and something new and novel. So it's not just the same old that I'm kind of running through in my mind. And it just orients me for that day to be like, what, number one, I'm waking up, which is something to be grateful for, rather than thinking about, I didn't get enough sleep, whatever, whatever has to happen today that I'm not looking forward to, anything like that. So, and then I get out of bed, and sometimes I'll grab my cup of coffee and I'll practice a coffee mindful break and a meditation that way. And sometimes I will just sit and meditate. And some days it doesn't happen until later, and some days it doesn't happen at all. And I used to be much more kind of rigid when my kids were younger, especially my daughter, about that. And now it's just, it's okay. I do the best I can. my mindful breaks, which are these opportunities and reminders in the midst of our day, have become more habit because I've been practicing them for a while. But when we're like any new habit, when we're establishing it as best we can, we want to bookend it between two already established habits. So an example of a mindful break is in between. I do a lot of coaching and still some therapy sessions. So I will get up from my chair in between sessions if I have some back-to-back ones, and I will do some stretching. I will do, a stand and kind of do a brief body scan, just notice what's happening in my body, drop my shoulders because guaranteed they're up, and unfurl my brow and all of these things. Yes, check the posture and just stretch whatever needs to be stretched, and come back into my body. So that's just a very simple way to just be present again. And then it kind of makes me feel fresh to come back to the next coaching session. So I have incorporated them pretty much into my day on a regular basis because I've been doing this for so long. But I always recommend that women start with one and just choose one mindful break because we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. It's just something you can do it two different ways. So we didn't talk about this yet, but kind of when we get quiet in the morning and do a little bit of meditation, we can ask what type of mindful break, what we're craving that day. Sometimes we need calm. Sometimes we want a little bit more assertiveness or confidence, or sometimes we want to create a little bit more balance. And so there are different mindful breaks for that, but pick that one for the day and make that a promise to yourself that I'm going to do this one mindful break. And sometimes they take 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and that's it for the day. And then, you can stack on over time, over the next few weeks, you can start to stack on other mindful breaks, but you don't want to start too big because like anything, we just want to make this manageable and not something else to add to our to-do list. It's really just incorporating it into our lives.
So nice. That was the one word that I picked out. And I mean, this was beautiful. And I love everything that you said, of course, but to make that promise to yourself, because I think a lot of us as busy working moms, mostly we're parents, we are doing so much for others. There's so much output, and so many of us want to live up to our word. We want to be there for everyone. We want to be that person that is supportive and that can be leaned on. And we're doing the things, whether it's for like PTA or for our children, for our friends, for our family members. So taking that perspective and really just mirroring it onto ourselves. Like you said, if you are going to make that promise that you are going to, just enjoy a few hot sips of coffee or listen to a guided meditation or spend 5 minutes taking some deep breaths in between meetings, moving your body in a way so that it doesn't feel so kinky and that you're doing things that really speak to you in the moment. That is a promise that I think oftentimes is the first that we let go of, or it's the first thing that kind of slides off when things get busy. So I love that you're recognizing that you really do have to make the decision to be mindful, because it can become habitual. And it's funny you mentioned gratitude, because I feel like that was the number one area that really helped me kind of get out of the burnout, was to just remember everything that's around me and look to be thankful for what it is that I have. And I just recorded a podcast episode on making gratitude a habit. So that's funny that you say that. But in creating this decision, this promise, we can then make these little mindful practices habitual. So I would love to have your take on how it can be easy. I mean, 5-minute mindfulness. This is a beautiful book that you've written. So how do we start this process? You've noted just by starting with one, a few minutes a day of choosing something that speaks to you. So can you share more on this? You have a sort of a 3-pronged approach to mindfulness. So what is this all about? How can we take action?
Right. So there are two pieces. It's starting your day as best you can, starting our day with a few minutes of meditation. And very simply, meditation is carving out time in our day to practice the skill of mindfulness. And so that might look like I sit outside and I listen to sounds and my mind will wander off, and then I come back to hearing the sounds over and over again. Or often we use the breath. I notice my inhale, I notice my exhale. My mind will wander off. If I had $1 for every time somebody told me they can't meditate because their mind is too busy and it wanders off, I would be giving so much money to charity. Because that's the biggest myth.
You should start charging then. There we go.
Yeah, there we exactly. That's the biggest myth I encounter. It's not about shutting off our minds or shutting off our thoughts. It's about familiarizing ourselves with our busy minds. So using a guided meditation with someone's voice is the easiest way to get started. And if you go to my website, I will send a 5-minute guided meditation that somebody can follow along with. There are apps, there are websites. You can do that so many different ways, but it's the best way to get started. And I always say to women, if you can't do 5 minutes in the morning, if literally that's too much, 1 minute, or sit up in your bed and take 3 deep inhales and deep exhales, which again, sounds like ridiculous and too simple, but you'll notice you don't do this because we tend to breathe shallowly in our chest throughout the day. So that's something so simple. A few minutes of meditation in the morning, getting quiet. We start to learn to pay attention to our thoughts, our body sensations, our emotions. And then we can also ask ourselves, what is it I'm needing? I mentioned that before. Like, what am I needing today or this phase of my life? Sometimes we need silence and we need quiet and we just need that peace. And sometimes we're like, you know what? I'm kind of bored and feeling lackluster and I want to do something more. So there are 3 types of mindful breaks. The breathe breaks are those calm and awareness breaks, like a coffee mindful break. There are the becoming breaks, and that's for, like you mentioned, so maybe you get a promotion or somebody in your family has something exciting going on and you need a little bit more energy or confidence. That's one of those breaks. And then the balance breaks, when we feel like the balance has shifted and it's off. How do we get back on course a little bit? And I just want to say one thing too about life balance. I hear a lot from people that there's no such thing, or it's BS, or it's impossible. And I think it depends on our definition, because I define it as this gentle, ongoing recalibration on a regular basis that can be fun. And it doesn't have to be so rigid, and we're never going to get there, and like it's never going to look perfect. It's more recognizing when we're kind of off and how do we get back on, and those tiny, tiny little shifts we can make, because this is definitely something that's for the rest of our lives, because those 3 mindful breaks, you pull out what you need. And I see it as this sort of upward spiral of growth where, as we continue and move through these phases of our lives and we evolve, women and moms and our families, we continue to grow. And so we might need, if I'm getting a promotion, I might need some of those becoming breaks, but then I'm in it and I'm in this promotion and I have a lot of responsibilities and I need back to some of those breathe breaks or whatever. So it kind of, we continue to use those for the rest of our lives.
So great. So we have 3 mindfulness breaks. The breathe break, I think that's beautiful. And I think we can all understand how that goes, especially in the morning. That's my, I love to wake up a little bit earlier before my kids wake up. It's like the best part of my day in some ways, just to set myself up. Becoming breaks. So you're saying perhaps when you need a little bit more stimulation or more energy, what would be an example of that? Like going out for a walk, or what would you suggest would be like a good type of a becoming break?
Right. So an example of that could be tracking your energy, which is, if you you can do this in a very sort of deliberate, methodical way of really writing down throughout your day or at the end of a day what your tasks were that day and what made you feel energized, what made you feel sort of neutral, and what made you feel drained. And then starting to pay attention and notice, or we can keep it in our minds, but these things are always helpful to kind of jot down. And over time, kind of paying attention every day. How can I, first of all, notice more, because we know some of the obvious ones, but we don't pay attention as much as we think. So what can I delegate, get rid of, take off my plate if it's draining me? What do I love? What energizes me? How can I get more of that into my schedule? And, if it's neutral, okay, fine. And also, I would say sometimes when we bring our mindful attention to that moment, like I talk about in my first book, the laundry, which it's like a lot of people will say I despise laundry. And to me, I'm like, oh, this is like this sweet time where I like watch my kids' clothes grow, like growing in size, until the point where like my daughters are my size. Now my son's is like, whose are whose, because everybody's getting so big, it's, and again, bringing a little bit of that gratitude. It can be a very different experience of like being resentful that I'm folding this laundry, or how sweet is this? And how lucky am I right now to have these people sometimes.
Absolutely.
And it's without
Yes.
forcing it. Sometimes it's not forcing it, but it's sort of this shift we can open up to. So yeah.
Okay. So becoming, I really like how you've explained that, because that's not exactly how I thought of it when you first mentioned it. So that's beautiful. And I really appreciate how we can just take a few minutes, 30 seconds even, to just go back and think of what really lit me up, what sparked joy for me today. What were those things that I was really not enjoying, or the things that maybe were sort of those forgotten moments? And I was laughing as you're talking about the laundry, because as the weather is now getting colder where I am in Northern Ontario, there looks like there's a few flakes of snow in the forecast. And so I was in our um, cubby, and I was taking out the bins, and it's not the most fun job, I will tell you. And I was feeling those moments of resentment and frustration, and just like, why am I doing this? Like thinking it was going to be 15 minutes, and 2 hours later, I was still
Mm-hmm.
looking through bins. But I did come across my toddler's next size of bin, and I was
Oh,
going through all of the clothes. And because we have three boys, I was like, oh, this was,
oh
Ben's, or this was,
yeah.
and, going through the moments. And it was kind of, bringing back those memories of when the older two were that size. And so, it can really bring you back into those beautiful moments in something that might seem so mundane or so draining. But just trying to be mindful about it is so beautiful. So we have our breath breaks, our becoming breaks, and then the third one is our balance breaks. And I
Yes,
do
yes.
appreciate your definition, because I think that for recovering perfectionists like yourself or myself, a lot of it was black and white. Like either I'm in balance or I'm not, or I'm
Yeah.
in shape or I'm not, or I'm happy or and so having a little bit more fluidity, knowing that the moments will kind of go up and down, but being able to bring yourself back to a place where you're feeling more balanced, I think really is how we can think of that. And so I really appreciate your definition of it. So when we're talking about having that balanced break, what are some examples that we can look to, or how would you think of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, something as simple as thinking about, do I need to put the gas pedal on or the brake on? Do I need the emergency brake? And sometimes life throws it on for us. It's like the family's sick, or some, mini crisis or a crisis shows up, and we have to just slam the brakes on. And just being aware that, it's temporary, it's a phase of life. How do we, know that we will get there again? So just being aware of where we are in speeding up or slowing down in our lives, in our phase of lives, because, when you have a bunch of little ones around, your time is going to look much different than mine, where mine are, in fifth grade and college. And so I have a lot more open time now. And so it does look different of what I can take on and what I can put on my plate. And I still have to be careful with that. Uh, another balance break, something as simple as getting clear on our values. What are our top four values? And there's an exercise in the book for this, of identifying those. And then anytime we're wanting to make a decision or take on a project or say any yes to a plan, it's sort of like I can just filter that through my top values. Does it support this? And, it could be a very simple thought process that we go through. So the mindful breaks, there are dozens in each book, and I love to hear from women too who create their own, which is really interesting and funny, and because they're all so unique. And so there are different types. There are some that are more about thought and planning, and some of them are more in the moment. So it does sort of mix it up.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Because I think that there is that misconception that anytime we're working on ourselves, whether it be like, personal or professional development, when we're talking about, self-care or, mindfulness and intentional living, we think of it as being A, time consuming, and B, perhaps sometimes boring. Sometimes it's like, oh, like meditation. I'm not going to just, become a monk and, sit on a bench all day and, just watch the sunrise. Although I feel like for some of us, in very busy places, that would be something that we would enjoy
Yes.
in those doses, but making it manageable. I love that you're bringing this realistic approach to it. So for those busy working parents, they're listening, they want to take action. Maybe they think, well, I'm not a morning person. There's no chance I can wake up early.
Yes.
There's no way. Or, my kids wake up at the crack of dawn. I don't know that that's doable for me. Or,
Yep.
I love that you're saying to kind of mix it into the day, add it to things that you're already doing. If you had like the easiest starting off place for maybe the most overwhelmed or stressed person who just doesn't even know where to start because they can't even make the decision to what to make for dinner that night, like where would you say begin here, start here, take that 1 minute pause?
Yep.
What would you say to that person?
I have two options. The first one I think of is that coffee mindful break that everyone loves, which coffee, tea, your lemon water, whatever you're having in the morning. And I know you are, we're all having our beverage in the morning. Instead
I
of
die for coffee. Yeah.
yes. Instead of, chugging it and not even recognizing that you've had it, take 20 seconds. 20 seconds, you can do this, but you have to stop and feel the warmth of the mug, feel the texture, bring it to your nose, smell the aroma. Take that first sip and hold it in your mouth and feel the warmth and taste it. And then notice as you're swallowing the warmth moving down your throat and into your stomach. 20 seconds. And that is going to be a very different way of drinking your beverage in the morning than you tend to drink it. And then if you want to stretch it out to 5 or 10 minutes, if you're able to, wonderful. That is one option. Another option is literally in the midst of your day. And some people will say, oh, I'm not a touchy-feely person, but there's something about releasing oxytocin when we touch our heart space. So you don't have to do this if you're in the grocery line or anything like that. But, putting your hands to your heart and taking 3 deep inhales and exhales, that is it. I promise you are going to be like, whoa. I said that before. It is radical, and it's radical in our busy lives that we stop and take those full deep breaths. So that is a great place to start. And then if you can do that a couple of times in the day, even better. You can do it with your kids. You can teach it to your kids. But definitely you asked before about benefits. There was a research study that was done with parents, and the parents themselves were taught mindfulness practices, not the kids. But what they found is after a year of mindfulness practice, the kids were more social, less reactive. They had better behavior, and they were more communicative than with their parents having practiced mindfulness. The kids had not learned any mindfulness directly at all. And so it filters down. Our kids are little emotional sponges that pick up our moods. They pick up all of this. And so we are bringing our best selves when we practice this, and we need to give ourselves permission, almost like we're going to take a vitamin or something. We want to take care of ourselves, and this is the best way we know how to bring our best selves to our families and our colleagues. And I always say the world, it sounds so, large and big, but it's true. We women, we're so smart. And I think being parents, really makes us more efficient. We have to think on our feet. We have so many skills that we develop by being parents, and the world needs those gifts too, in whatever form that is. And so when we're overstretched and stressed and burned out, we have nothing left to give.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. I love what you're saying with putting your hand to heart, literally. And I had started doing this, and I can't remember why, but when I would see on the clock, or I would go to pick up my phone to, who knows, scroll or text or check my email, whatever, and I would see a reoccurring number, 1111, 222, whatever. I now literally stopped, and I put hand to heart, and I look around myself in my surroundings, and I just take a breath, and I just pause for just one moment. And for me, it's and it's funny because you realize very quickly how often you see these number patterns. But it's just that reminder for me. And so,
Yes.
we might come up with these different little things, but if you can even set a timer on your phone. I had a naturopath tell me once to literally put a timer on every hour, just when I was really in the thick of my burnout, and literally for every hour, stop and take 3 deep breaths. And so when we sometimes have to force ourselves, when it's not natural for us to do these things, we have to put these practices in place in a way that will force us to do it so that it then becomes natural to us. But I love how you're making it so easy, so accessible. Can you just tell us a little bit about your latest book? Because it's called Don't Forget to Breathe.
Right.
5-minute mindfulness for busy women. So here in this beautiful book, we can beat stress and find calm anytime, anywhere, even in the grocery aisle, as
That's
you
right.
alluded
Yes.
to. Tell us a little bit about this book. Why did you decide to write it? Because you've already written some books on mindfulness. And why do you feel that it's so important now that we have those 5 minutes? Why 5 minutes? Tell us a little bit about this book.
Yeah. Well, 5 minutes is, sort of it's a bit arbitrary, right? It can be 1, 2, 5, but it's about five. Like I feel like we can all carve out five somewhere in our day. And so it's that interrupting of automatic pilot. What we know is we tend to run in fight or flight. And we often have chronic stress and we are in fight or flight or freeze a lot of the time. And so, talking about that naturopath and getting you to just breathe, every time you are taking those deep breaths or we take those deep breaths, we are sending a signal to our brain that fight or flight is not needed, and because our body and brain don't distinguish between real danger and perceived danger. And our lives just being busy with the hockey lessons and the responsibilities and work, our body and mind think it's dangerous. It's a threat, but it's not. So we send a signal to our body and our brain can work more efficiently, and our body has less cortisol and less stress hormones and less inflammation and disease and all of these things, all the way down to the cellular level when it comes to aging and how we age well and live longer. Meditation has been shown to benefit us. And so the Don't Forget to Breathe has 50 different mindful breaks. Again, those three types: the breathe, the becoming, and balance breaks, and talks a little bit about meditation and how the most effective combo is to be meditating for a few minutes every morning and then sprinkling our day with mindful breaks, which we want to take a little bit of time to get there.
So beautiful. Thank you for writing this book, by the
Oh,
way. I think
you're
it's the
welcome.
book that so many of us need to read and really put into practice. You do have some beautiful tools on your website as well. So shondamoralis.net, and I'll link it in the notes for this podcast episode. But for those of us who are like, okay, you have convinced me, I am ready to make mindfulness a daily practice, and we're ready to get started. Tell us about some of these tools, because I think these are really great stepping stones in just kind of, dipping our toe in this beautiful mindfulness water. So tell us about all of the things that you have on the website for us.
Right. So a 5-minute guided meditation, again, with my voice in it, that will guide you through just a very simple awareness of your breath and then asking what it is you're needing or craving that day. And then there's an accompanying PDF download that has 3 different types of those mindful breaks, one of each. So you can choose from one of those and get started with this practice. And I invite everyone to experiment with it. It should be fun. It should be playful. We should have this sense of almost amusement, because that's the other thing with us ambitious women. We tend to be very hard on ourselves and perfectionistic sometimes. And so to like, am I doing this right? I'm not doing very well. I'm not, all of these things, that when we can just have that sense of amusement, like, wow, look at my mind go. It's on my to-do list again for the 10th time during this 5-minute meditation. It's fine. That's totally fine. So it's just a way to kind of get started and practice and just see what you notice, have fun with it.
That sense of curiosity.
Yes,
So
exactly.
beautiful.
Yep.
And where can we get your book? Your Don't Forget to Breathe, your latest book.
Yep. Both books, anywhere books are sold.
Ah, beautiful.
Yes.
Shonda, thank you so much for your time, for the work that you're doing, for the beautiful, beautiful practices that you're putting into this world for all of us busy working moms. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for letting me share it.
And one last question, final takeaways. If for nothing else, if our mind has been wandering this whole episode, we've been driving, carpooling, whatever it might be, running, and we're on autopilot. What is that one main takeaway that you would love for our audience to know as we sign off?
Yeah, give yourself permission and make it a priority that you have to carve out a little bit of time for yourself. And I would also say for women, we tend to be so hard on ourselves. So make sure you're giving yourselves what I call mommy high fives, which are pay attention and notice to everything that you are doing and accomplishing and the little things, because we only tend to notice when we forget to do something or or we make one little mistake and we don't give ourselves credit for all of those dozens of other things. So give yourself credit, give yourself permission, and get started.
Oh, beautiful. Mommy high five to you.
You as well.
Thank you. How amazing was that? Oh my gosh, it was such an honor to chat with Shonda and discuss topics that are so near and dear to both our hearts. I hope you got some tips and some actionable steps for easy ways to incorporate mindfulness in your daily life. If you found value in today's episode, can you do me a quick favor and rate or give this episode a review in your podcast player? And share it with a friend. Or better yet, take a screen capture on your phone and share it to your stories, tagging me. The more people who can hear this incredibly important lifestyle information, the better. And if you're interested in joining me live on November 16th for the virtual workshop, You First, Making the Shift to Better Balance, head to the podcast notes for this episode and save your spot now. Until the next time, take good care.